Chapter 13. John Watson Needs to Shut Up. Amelia yawned, frowning when she saw Sherlock's sleeping form laying beside her. She took a lock of Sherlock's dark hair, curling it around her finger. "Hey," she murmured, as his alert green eyes opened. "Hey," he replied huskily. "I want to go out for breakfast," Amelia said softly as she got up, stripping off her day-old clothes. "Would you like to come with?" She could feel Sherlock's eyes on her as she struggled to unclasp her bra. "Sherlock, could you—" She turned to look back at him over her shoulder, corner of her mouth pulled up in a weak smile. Sherlock got up reluctantly, definitely unclasping it for her. "Thanks," she said as she pulled on another bra, grabbing Sherlock's white button-up shirt. She turned to Sherlock as she buttoned it up, the black lacy bra visible under the thin white fabric. She smiled as Sherlock raised his eyebrow, slipping into a pair of dark jeans. She tucked the hem of the shirt into the waistband of her trousers. Amelia wasn't quite sure where this sudden coyness was coming from, but neither of them seemed to be complaining. "Are you coming, or am I going to have to sit by myself? Unlike you, I have the decency to change when no one else is in the room." "Ooh, shots fired," Amelia said with a smirk as she walked out to the living room. "Morning, John." The oldest Watson didn't look up from his newspaper. "Wow, you're sociable today," Amelia said sarcastically, just as Sherlock came out of the bedroom, shirt still half open as he fumbled to button it up. Amelia raised an eyebrow. "You change quickly." John gaped at Sherlock. "You!" he snarled. Sherlock frowned, vaguely remembering a confused owl, in Amelia's opinion. Sherlock glanced around. "Me?" "Sherlock bloody Holmes!" John folded his newspaper and set it to the side before leaping to his feet. He swung a punch at Sherlock's face. "You slept with my sister!" he accused. Amelia bit back a laugh, although the situation was anything but funny. Sherlock easily stepped to the side, using John's momentum against him. Sherlock gazed at the doctor coolly. "John," he began. "My sister, Sherlock," John continued on. "I don't know what goes on in your head, but you don't just sleep with your best mate's sister." "Oh, for God's sake, John, I didn't sleep with him," Amelia said, stepping between Sherlock and John, hoping that by interfering, John would stop attempting to hit Sherlock. Instead, she earned a swift, and entirely accidental, she'd found out later, as John had been aiming for Sherlock, punch to the face, John's knuckle hitting her cheekbone. Amelia reeled back, not preparing for the violent action, and by the time John had realized what he'd done, Amelia had retaliated, punching her brother with as much force as she could muster, sending him collapsing to the ground, unconscious. Amelia blew on her skinned knuckles, shaking her hand out. Sherlock made a face at the cut, marring Amelia's cheek. "Surely that cannot be pleasant." "I've been hurt worse before, Sherlock. Broke all the bones in my left hand, my right foot, and cracked 3 ribs. Jumped out of a car the wrong way. Well, technically pushed, but that's a long story." She prodded at John's lip form. "Sometimes my brother really needs to shut up." "I don't think it was entirely necessary to knock him out, Amy." "I don't think it was entirely necessary to not do so, sure." Sherlock narrowed his eyes at his new nickname, but said nothing. "Besides, Sherlock, he should be all right in a moment or two. I didn't hit him that hard, and he shouldn't have any permanent damage. Maybe a bruised face and ego, but he should be fine. In fact, if I did my calculations correctly, which I did, I didn't go to Cambridge for nothing, you know. He should be good in about 10 minutes. Help me move him to the couch?" "You're responsible for this mess. You clean it up." "See, this is why I would never sleep with you." "I beg to differ. This is precisely why you would sleep with me." "Shut up and help me." "Back to my first point. You're responsible for this mess. You clean it up." Amelia muttered insults under her breath, cursing Sherlock until the end of days. Sherlock swore he heard Amelia call him a stubborn prat who won't help anyone but himself. With a reluctant sigh, Sherlock lifted John's shoulders up, assisting Amelia in her task of setting her brother down on the sofa. "Thank you," Amelia said, fingers dabbing at the wound on her cheek. "That's going to leave a mark. Lovely." She took out a box of mint and Anzi tea from the cupboard, then set about preparing John a cup of tea. She retrieved a bundle of mint from the fridge, ripping off a few leaves and putting in the empty mug as she waited for the kettle to boil. John started to stir, sitting up slightly before promptly retching on the carpet beside him. Amelia grimaced. "Oh, that's, pleasant. You're a graduate biologist. You should be used to bodily fluids. Although the sight of John's partly digested beans isn't exactly appealing, I must admit," Sherlock said, making no move to assist the doctor. "Ph.D. in psychology, too, I have, you know," Amelia said. Dr. John H. Watson and Dr. Amelia L. Watson. Too bad Harry didn't join us. 3 Dr. Watsons would have been fantastic. Her voice took on a gruff tone. Nice to meet you, Dr. Watson, and Dr. Watson. She glanced over to her brother. You all right there, John? No, my head hurts. I'm dizzy and I'm starving. Well, the latter would be mainly due to the fact that you regurgitated all the food you've consumed in the past 10 hours onto the floor, Sherlock added in unhelpfully. Amelia handed John his tea, taking care to avoid the mess on the floor. Actually, I'm quite hungry myself. Perhaps we should go out to breakfast once John's head is cleared up. It'll be on me. John muttered something incomprehensible under his breath, slurring his words slightly. Yeah, he said a little bit louder, clearing his throat to speak properly. Amelia waited till John had finished his tea before dragging him and Sherlock out the door. Amelia, John, and Sherlock sat at the table at a cafe the youngest Watson had chosen at random. John had ordered a hot breakfast, and despite the fact that it was Amelia's idea to go out for breakfast, her appetite had disappeared, and she had ordered nothing but a hot cup of tea. Sherlock drummed his fingers on the table, having picked up the habit from Amelia, waiting for the pink phone, which sat on the table beside Sherlock, to ring. Feeling better? Sherlock asked John and Amelia, glancing between the both of them. John nodded. Sherlock turned to Amelia. And you? Yes, fine, Amelia said, inspecting her wound in the back of her spoon. She set it down. You realize we've hardly stopped for breath since this thing started? She took a sip of her tea, eyeing Sherlock over the rim of her teacup. Although I'm really not complaining. I'm starting to enjoy myself. Of course you are, John muttered. Then louder as he turned to Sherlock. Has it occurred to you? Probably. Amelia coughed into her tea. No, John said. Has it occurred to you that the bomber's playing a game with you two? The envelope, breaking into the other flat, the dead kid's shoes? It's all meant for you and Amy. Oh yes, thank you, John. That's for that insightful piece of information. And if we didn't know... As if we didn't know, Amelia said sarcastically, rolling her eyes. Yes, we know, Sherlock said. Is it him, then? Asked John. Moriarty? Sherlock shot a brief look at Amelia. Perhaps, he murmured. Just then the phone rang. Sherlock unlocked it. This time, only 3. Greenwich pips played. A photo of a smiling, middle-aged, blonde woman appearing on the screen shortly after. Sherlock frowned. That could be anybody. Well, it could be, yeah, John said. Lucky for you, I've been more than a little unemployed. Sherlock furrowed his eyebrow. How do you mean? And especially lucky for you. Mrs. Hudson and I watch far too much telly, Amelia said, getting to her feet and walking over to the counter. She grabbed the remote, flipping through several channels, smiling when she stumbled across what she was looking for. Thank you, Tyra. Doesn't she look lovely, everybody, now? The woman on screen said happily. Anyway, speaking of silk purses and sewers' ears... Ooh, I know something Sherlock doesn't, Amelia sang happily. Sherlock glared at the youngest Watson. Don't be so immature. The phone started to ring, and he immediately picked it up, holding it to his ear. Sensing that Sherlock needed a moment to himself, John got up and went over to his sister. So, is it Moriarty? Amelia looked at him, startled. What? Oh, yes. She drummed her fingers on the counter. I imagine so. I work for the government, John. I've made a lot of enemies. Amelia laughed bitterly. Not all of them are dead, and those that aren't want me dead. Ames, John, I don't want your sympathy. Not from you, Amelia said, shaking her head. She glanced over toward Sherlock, who was angrily talking to the person on the other end of the line. And certainly not from Sherlock. Why are you doing this? Amelia heard Sherlock hiss into the phone. Eventually, Sherlock lowered the phone, shaking his head at Amelia and John. Amelia pushed away from the counter, taking a seat beside Sherlock. She looked over the television screen to see a headline rolling across the bottom. Makeover Queen Connie Prince dead at 48. She is so not 48, Amelia said under her breath. She cleared her throat, jerking her head towards the screen. That's our woman now. Now, Amelia clapped her hands together. Shall we go catch ourselves a bomber? St. Bart's Morgue. Connie Prince, Lestrade read from the woman's profile. 54. Told you she wasn't 48, Amelia said, smirking at Sherlock. Yes, well, Lestrade shuffled his feet awkwardly. She had one of those makeover shows on the telly. Did you see it? No, said Sherlock. Very popular. She was going places. Not anymore, Amelia said, effectively ending that part of the conversation. Amelia took the file out of Lestrade's hands, flipping through it. She pressed a knuckle to her lips. So dead 2 days, according to one of her staff, Raul de Santos. She cut her hand on a rusty nail in the garden. Nasty wound. Would have hurt. Amelia shut the folder, then bent down to examine the long wound between Connie Prince's thumb and index finger. Tetanus bacteria enters the bloodstream, and good night, Vienna, Sherlock finished. He took a step back. There's something wrong with this picture. Eh? Lestrade raised an eyebrow. Can't be as simple as it seems, otherwise the bomber wouldn't be directing us towards it, Sherlock said in a low voice. Something's wrong. He narrowed his eyes, carefully examining the small pinpricks on Connie's foreheads with a pocket magnifying glass. You don't think it could have been, Amelia started. Highly possible. I wouldn't be surprised. Sherlock cut her off, knowing where she was going. Oh, that's clever, Amelia said, smiling to herself. Very clever. She turned towards her brother. John? The cut on her hand. It's deep. Would have bled a lot, right? Yeah. But the wound's clean. Very clean. And fresh. Sherlock nodded. He pursed his lips. John, how long would the bacteria have been incubated inside her? 8, 10 days, John answered, not understanding, while Amelia and Sherlock both had their eyebrows raised, waiting for him to piece it together. The cut was made later. After she was dead, Lestrade said. Must have been, said Sherlock. The only question is, how did the tetanus enter the dead woman's system? Sherlock looked to Amelia. You want to help, right? Aren't you supposed to be some kind of genius? Of course I do. I need Connie Prince's background, family history, everything. Give me data, Sherlock ordered. I heard you were good with finding data. You flatter me, Mr. Holmes. Amelia took out her phone. Right. John, you get started. I'll work from here. What? On your phone? Yes, on my phone. I presume you'll be needing a computer, so off you pop. Amelia shooed her brother out of the room, and once she was certain he was no longer in earshot, stopped Lestrade and Sherlock from leaving, placing a hand on either of their shoulders. There's something else we need to talk about. Something we haven't thought of, but I think Lestrade has. Is there? Asked Sherlock. Yes, Lestrade reaffirmed. Why is he doing this? The bomber. If this woman's death was suspicious, why point it out? Good Samaritan, Sherlock said, starting to lead Amelia away. Who press gang suicide bombers? Lestrade caught Amelia's arm. Sherlock letting out a resigned sigh and stopping in his tracks. Amelia shrugged. Bad Samaritan? I'm serious, Amelia. Listen, I'm cutting you slack here. I'm trusting you, even though I know you're hiding something. But out there somewhere, some poor bastard's covered in Semtex, and it's just waiting for you to solve the puzzle. So tell me, what are we dealing with? Sherlock let out a breath. Something new. Amelia took a step back, admiring the photo she'd pinned to the wall of 221B's living room. The entire space was covered in pictures, maps, photographs, absolutely anything and everything Amelia had been able to get her hands on. Not to mention the fact that the printer, which she'd just bought and installed in the last hour, was printing out the files Mycroft had just sent her. Connection. There must be a connection, Amelia said, pacing back and forth. Sherlock sitting in his chair, tuning his violin. She turned sharply to face him. You are absolutely no help whatsoever. I hope you're aware. Indeed, I am. Then do something to change it. No, you seem to be onto something. I shan't ruin whatever it is you're getting to. There are only 3 hours left, you moron. Stop being useless and help me. Sherlock leapt to his feet, a snarl on his mouth. He pointed to various spots on the diagram in quick succession. Carl Powers, killed 20 years ago. The bomber knew him, admitted that he knew him. The bomber's iPhone was in stationery from the Czech Republic. First hostage was Cornwall, the second from London, the third from Yorkshire, judging by her accent. What's he doing? Working his way around the world, showing off? And now you need my dilemma. Now you see my dilemma. You'd think that between the two of us, we'd be able to figure this out. You would think, Sherlock said, casting a cool eye on Amelia. He was starting to realize that Amelia wasn't beautiful in the practical sense. Her eyes were too far apart, and her hair was perpetually dry and frizzy. She adorned scars like jewelry, with lines marring her neck, arms, legs, and one at the corner of her mouth. Her ruby lips permanently pulled down in a scowl. She wore clothing 2 seasons too late, and all the clothes she owned were torn, frayed, and faded. But she was beautiful in the same way that the belladonna plant was beautiful with its glistening black berries and dark flowers. She was tempting, cruel, relentless, and difficult to kill. Amelia Watson was poison, yet one could never seem to get enough of her. Sherlock, Amelia said from downstairs, voice wavering. You need to come see this. I can either examine the evidence or I can come see whatever it is you're so frantic by. It's physically impossible to do both. Sherlock, I've had it up to here with you, Amelia snarled. I'm afraid your remark doesn't have nearly the same effect without the visuals. Then get your ass down here. Amelia blew out an angry breath before storming down the stairs. What? He growled. Sherlock blew out an angry breath before storming down the stairs. What? He growled. His gaze fell upon a large dog crate sitting by the door. An envelope particularly balanced atop of it. What the hell? Precisely. Amelia reached for the envelope hesitantly, fingers hovering over the cream paper. It's the same envelope as the one that we found in the safe. The same one with the phone, Sherlock reaffirmed. Amy, it could be armed. I'm well aware, Amelia said. She pulled out a small knife from her pocket, carefully cutting open the envelope. She pulled out a sheet of paper, the exact color of the envelope. Carefully, Amelia unfolded it, licking her dry lips before reading what it said. 2M. 2M, Sherlock said, reading the letter over Amelia's shoulder. Could be a code of some sort, a message intended for only one person, perhaps. So why send it to us? Because the message isn't for one person, it's for two. And with that correction, you just answered your own question. Amelia bit her lip. 2M. Right so. M would be the sender's initial. Naturally. Shut up, I'm thinking. Oh, congratulations, you figured out the meaning of the initial. Yet we still have the entire half of the equation to... if you stopped talking for one moment, you would have already figured this out. You simply implied that you've already decoded the meaning. Which I have. Amelia pursed her lips, tucking away the letter. Thanks, Sherlock. If you were to make a heart emojicon through a text, what would you do? Not that you use emojicons, but you're the kind of person who types everything out, letter by letter. You do the same. Oh, I'm not denying it. Amelia folded her arms over her chest, glaring down at the crate. So, getting back on track. You'd make a heart by doing the less than sign and the number 3, yes? A number less than 3 could be the infinite amount of possibilities. Oh, and try to be a little normal, Holmes. What do you think the first number someone normal would think of? Amelia smirked. And taking in the context of the next part of the message, we found our answer. Heart M. Clever. Painstakingly simple and rather boring, Amelia said flippantly. And assuming the nature of the case we're on, M would stand for Moriarty. Of course it would, Amelia smiled. Now, the present Moriarty has left us is quite the opposite of his message. It's really quite interesting. Amelia bent down and unlocked the crate. Tentatively, a squat English bulldog emerged from the darkness. He was white with brown splotches of color on his back, glaring at both Amelia and Sherlock with beady, black eyes. He bared his teeth at the youngest Watson, mouth pulled back in a snarl, already wrinkled face creasing more. Amelia took a cautious step towards the dog, raising her hands in surrender, keeping her eyes lowered to the ground, recalling what she learned about wolves in their hierarchy, in the wilderness surviving portions of her training. Amelia lowered to her knees. Don't be an idiot. A bulldog isn't going to harm you. Sherlock scuffed. Amelia swore to herself that she'd punch Sherlock later. The bulldog came towards Amelia, sniffing the back of Amelia's hand with its damp nose. He licked her hand, rough sandpaper on skin, snarled, gargled, and knotted with scar tissue. He pressed his forehead into her hand, begging for attention. Sherlock bent down to get a better view of it, but the dog immediately started growling, baring his keen eyes at the detective. Sherlock immediately took a step back. Don't be an idiot. A bulldog isn't going to harm you, Amelia said in a gruff voice, attempting to imitate Sherlock's accent. He didn't seem to appreciate her mocking him, shooting the youngest Watson a glare. He straightened his hands in his pockets. I was never fond of bulldogs. No, you were fond of Irish settlers, weren't you? Amelia said flippantly, not looking up from the dog, petting him with a smile on her face, and not seeming to care that she was getting fur all over her clothes. Sherlock froze. How do you know that? He asked, voice cracking. 2 seconds later. Mycroft, I should have known. Hardly. I read your file. Amelia peered up at Sherlock behind a curtain of dark hair. She wetted her lips, a nervous tick Sherlock was certain that she'd picked up from John. Sherlock? Yes? I'm really sorry about your dog, Sherlock. No one deserves to lose anyone or anything they love. Sometimes the queen has to be sacrificed to win the game. Life isn't a game of chess, contrary to what you and I believe. You can't just blindly sacrifice the queen to save the king. But a pawn can cross the board to become another queen, Sherlock said, watching Amelia as she bent down to continue petting the dog. Then, and only then, can the game be won. A king is nothing without his queen. Surely you know that by now. Sherlock, are we talking about me, or are we talking about chess? I'm really not sure. Sherlock smiled wryly. You're hardly a pawn, Amelia Watson. Nor are you a queen. Not yet. You've got ways to go. No, you're a knight. You're the one who makes the unpredictable moves, the ones that you won't see coming unless you're paying attention. You're a wild card, Miss Watson. I'm flattered, Holmes, truly. You shouldn't be, Sherlock said cryptically. He turned away, and then in a voice so soft Amelia couldn't hear, "You'll either break me or make me, Amelia." Sherlock burst into Scotland Yard, brandishing a file in his hand. He waved it in the air, a smug smile on his face. "Raul de Santos is your killer. Kenny Prince's houseboy. Second autopsy shows it wasn't tetanus that poisoned Connie Price. It was botulinum toxin." He threw the file down on Lestrada's desks. "We've been here before. Carl Powers," Sherlock tutted. "Our bombers," repeated himself. Sherlock frowned at the lead Amelia was holding in her free hand, the other hand tapping away at her phone. He followed the lead. Yeah, it's a leash. Okay. He followed the leash to the English bulldog currently chewing on the corner of Anderson's desk. "Is that a dog?" Lestrade said in confusion. "I didn't think you were blind, Lestrade. Seems you've proven me wrong," Amelia muttered, not glancing up from the screen of her phone. "Oh, for God's sake, Mycroft, no, we haven't started the Bruce Partington's case because your brother's being a stubborn arse." Amelia looked up at last. "Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud?" Donovan glared at Amelia. "Get your dog to stop eating Philip's desk," she snarled. Amelia raised an eyebrow. "Is that his name? I've started to refer to him, mentally anyways, as the one with the weasel face." Sherlock snorted, failing to disguise it as a cough. John, who'd chosen to remain silent, knowing that he would not be changed his sister's behavior, let out a resigned sigh, holding his head in his hands. "Yes, well, oh, bloody hell!" Donovan shrieked as the dog bit her ankle, leaving behind red pinpricks where his teeth had pierced her skin. "He just bit me!" "Yeah, he doesn't like idiots. Wonder what that says about you," Amelia said. "Besides, Donovan," Sherlock cleared his throat, you should be used such behavior from the man you've chosen to have an affair with." There was a long moment of silence before Amelia burst into laughter, tears streaming from her eyes, and strangled noises escaping her mouth. She doubled over, clutching at her abdomen, everyone else looking on in concern. Donovan let out a miffed huff of air before storming out of the office. Amelia, still snickering, took a seat in a chair, muffling her laughter in the back of her hand, and the dog curling up by her feet. Lestrade turned to Sherlock. "So, how'd he do it?" "Botox injection." "Botox? Oh, hell, Amelia, we don't allow dogs in the office." "Oh, hell, Amelia, we don't allow dogs in the office, so get him off the desk." Lestrade groaned as he saw that Amelia had placed the dog atop Anderson's desk, allowing the bulldog tread through the forensic scientist's file without care, kicking once neat stack off the desk and letting them flat at the ground, while scattering many pens and pencils about. "His name is too, and he has feelings," Amelia said, making no effort to take her dog off the desk. "Why did you name him?" Sherlock cut Lestrade off with a sharp. "Botox is a diluted form of botulinum, and among other things. Raul de Santos was employed to give Connie her regular facial injections. My contact through Amy, gave her, the complete record of Raul's internet purchases. He's been bulk ordering Botox for months. Bide his time, then upped the strength to a fatal dose." "You sure about this?" asked Lestrade. "He is, I am, and John seems pretty confident in both our abilities," Amelia said, jerking her head towards her brother. "All right, my office," Lestrade nodded. "Hey, Sherlock," John said, catching Sherlock's arm before he entered Lestrade's office. Amelia hovering in the doorway, heading to with the toe of her shoe. "How long?" "What?" Sherlock blinked. "How long have you known?" "Well, this one was quite simple, actually. Amy figured it out just as quickly as I did, although I don't imagine that the bomber would have accepted her conclusion as an answer. Two parts of a whole. I believe the quote is, Sherlock," Amelia said. "That quote is used to describe couples. Nevertheless, like I said, the bomber repeated himself. That was a mistake." "Yes, Sherlock, I think we both heard you the first time," Amelia snapped at him, forcefully handing Two's lead to Lestrade. She took a step towards Sherlock, glaring up at him in such an angle that their noses barely touching. Her eyes narrowed. "Point is, what I think John is trying to say is that the hostage, the old woman, she's been there all this time." Sherlock leaned in closer, bending down to meet her cold gaze. Amelia involuntarily took a step back, hitting a wall, but Sherlock only moved closer, until she could feel his breath on her face, scented with cigarettes and coffee. "I knew I could save her," Sherlock said. "I also knew that the bomber had given us 12 hours. I solved the case quickly. They gave me time to get on with other things. Don't you see? We're one up on him." Amelia pursed her dark lips. "You don't just get a one-up on Moriarty, Sherlock," she hissed, making sure John couldn't hear. "That's not how the game works." "Oh, and you've played his game, then?" I've played his games several times, and I'm the only one who's managed to survive them. So take my advice. Back off. Never, said Sherlock, spinning on his heels, walking into Lestrade's office. Ames, John said worriedly as Amelia gritted her teeth. Are you all right? Amelia took a long moment to think before answering. No, I'm really not, she said. She said nothing else, taking Chu's lead out of Lestrade's grasp and taking a seat on the floor beside her dog, petting his ears absent-mindedly. Sherlock flipped open Lestrade's laptop, opening it to his website. Raul dos Santos, the houseboy, Botox. Sherlock picked up a phone as soon as it started reading, holding it to his ear. Hello? Help me, the woman sobbed. Tell us where you are. Address. He was so... The woman ignored Sherlock. His voice... No, 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 Sherlock said quickly. Tell me nothing about him. Nothing. He sounded so... soft. The sound of a gun being fired followed the sounds of fire consuming all oxygen in the room. The line fell dead, the beeping of a dial tone filling the space. Hello, Sherlock said. Sherlock? Amelia asked. The detective said nothing. Amelia froze, rising to her feet. She let out a breath, then slammed her fist down on the table. Chu yelped, cowering behind John's legs, and even Sherlock seemed surprised by her action. Amelia blew out a shaky breath. You, she hissed. You could have saved her, and you didn't. Amy? Don't you Amy me, Sherlock Holmes, Amelia spat. That woman's life was on the line, and you let her die. And if you don't have blood on your hands, as if you don't have blood on your hands, Sherlock said sardonically. Don't you dare, Sherlock, Amelia said shakily. Don't you dare, Amelia sighed, running a hand over her face. Yes, I have blood on my hands, and I regret it to an extent you do not, and cannot comprehend. This isn't about me, Sherlock. This is about you, and about how you messed up. Amy, I didn't mean... I know you didn't, but that doesn't change anything. No one said anything. The only sound, Amelia's slightly elevated breathing, and the occasional snores from Chu. The silence was loud, deafening even. Amelia wanted to take a hammer to it, to break it to pieces, to shatter it to nothing. Instead, she turned sharply on her heels and stormed out of Lestrade's office. Chapter 14. Heroes Don't Exist. Amelia clapped her hands over her ears as she tried to tune out the reporter's rambling on the television, failing miserably. Amelia gripped the edge of the table with her fingers. Will you turn that damn thing off, or at least turn it down, she snarled. Is said to have been caused by a faulty gas main, a spokeswoman from the utilities company, the reporter trailed off as John turned down the volume. He certainly gets about, the doctor said, furrowing his eyebrows. Well, obviously, I lost that round, Sherlock said, leaning over and muting the television. Although technically, I did solve the case. He killed the old lady because she started to describe him. Just once he put himself in the firing line. What do you mean? John said, not noticing the way that Amelia's grip on the table suddenly became tighter. She practically threw the chair backwards as she got up, collapsing on the sofa alongside Chu, absent-mindedly scratching behind his ears. Well, said Sherlock, usually he must stay above it all. He's organized these things, but no one ever has direct contact. What, like the Connie Prince murder? He arranged that? So some people come to him wanting their crimes fixed up, like booking a holiday? Exactly like that, Amelia said quietly. Novel, Sherlock said at the same time. He glanced down at his phone. Taking his time this time. Anything on Carl Power's case? John piped up, not enjoying the silence between them. Okay, what the hell happened between you two? One day you're the best of friends, the next you're not speaking to each other. Nothing and nothing, Sherlock dismissed. All the living classmates check out spotless. No connection. Maybe the killer was older than Carl. The thought had occurred, Amelia said from the sofa, eyes still closed. So why is he doing this, then? Playing the game with you? John raised an eyebrow. Do you think he wants to be caught? Sherlock looked at Amelia, a small smile on his lips. I think he wants to be distracted. Amelia looked up at this, sensing he wasn't talking about Moriarty. I hope you'll be very happy together, she snapped, standing. Sorry, what? Sherlock said in confusion. Amelia's eyes blazed with barely contained fury. There are lives at stake, Sherlock. Actual human lives. Just so I know, do you care about that at all? Will caring about them help save them? Nope. Then I continue not to make that mistake. So you find that easy, do you? Yes, very. Is that news to you? Amelia blew out a breath, hating her answer. No. Sherlock leaned back into his chair, scanning Amelia's defensive posture. I've disappointed you, he realized. That's good. That's a good deduction, yeah. Don't make people into heroes, Amy. Heroes don't exist, and if they did, I wouldn't be one of them. And in that instant, whatever trust Sherlock had built up in the past month came crumbling came crumbling down all at once. If their trust had taken form in the shape of a mansion, surely there was nothing left but rubble now. No walls left standing. Even the framework was sure to have collapsed. Amelia stood in the wake of the destruction, her teeth tightly gritted, resisting the urge to punch the detective. Her resolve was about to break, but John beat her to it, giving Sherlock a sharp kick in the shin. Sherlock winced, then grinned as the pink phone suddenly rang. Excellent! He unlocked it. 3 Gwyn pitch played, followed by a photo of a riverbank. View of the Thames, south back, somewhere between Southwark Bridge and Waterloo. You check the papers, I'll look online. Sherlock looked up at last when Amelia made an attempt to move. Oh, you're angry with me, so you won't help. Amelia glared at him for a moment before lifting her shoulder. Not much cop, this carrying lark, Sherlock said under his breath, searching through his phone. Amelia pursed her lips before anyone could react, swung a punch at Sherlock's face, making sure to hit his cheek and nothing else. She only wanted to hurt him, not leave a mark. I can see right through you, Sherlock, she said in a low voice. You pretend not to care, that you don't have feelings, but you are transparent. You're a drama queen. You love the attention. You relish in it. Amelia picked up two with slight difficulty. The dog was certainly quite heavy, and stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind her. Two immediately started clawing at the door, letting out a low keen as he begged to go back out. No, Amelia said stubbornly. She took a seat on the bed, holding her head in her hands. She didn't look up as Sherlock barged into the room. Get out. It's my room. Not anymore. Sherlock sighed. Amelia, I apologize for my earlier actions. I had no right. Damn straight. Amelia ran a hand over her face, blowing out a breath. It doesn't matter anyways. You're Sherlock Holmes, the great consulting detective. I get it. I really do. I just came barging into your lives without an announcement of any sort. I'm sorry. I can only imagine what that would have been like. Nevertheless, Amelia, Sherlock said in a voice barely above a hoarse whisper. He took a seat on the bed, two immediately jumping up and curling up on his lap. Sherlock petted him absent-mindedly. I had no right to say such harsh words to you. Your presence in 221B has been nothing but a gift in its simplest form. Your company, you, mean more to me than you could possibly fathom. I want you to know that no matter what I say, I care for you. I truly care for you. Amelia frowned slightly, surprised by Sherlock's behavior. Well, you've proven my hypothesis, she said under her breath. Oh? You're not a sociopath, Sherlock. Just someone who doesn't understand sentiment, emotions. That's why I have you. I can't always be a psychologist, Sherlock. Nor can I always be a detective, Amelia. No? No. Sherlock moved closer to Amelia, letting her lean into his side. I'm not a good person, Amelia, and that isn't going to change. You're certainly something, Miss Watson. As are you, Amelia said. I know you aren't a good person, Sherlock. I'm not asking you to be. Why else do you think I'd put up with your nonsense all the time, with minimal complaining? Enunciation. Don't finish that sentence, Sherlock, or so help me God, I'm not missing your nose this time. Yes, that was rather cruel. You deserved it. Did too. You sound like a child. You sound like a child, Amelia mocked in a nasally tone. She cleared her throat. Sorry. No, you're not. No, I'm really not, Amelia agreed, laughing. Sherlock joined in with a low chuckle. Amelia blushed as Sherlock smiled slightly, and there was a brief flash of something Amelia couldn't quite define, flickering through his eyes. Amelia tried to find the word to describe what she'd just seen and failed. Joy? Love? No, the only way she could put it is the same look that mothers had when they gazed upon their child. Bliss and awe. She looked away, biting her lower lip. Are you ready to start another case, Mr. Holmes? Certainly, Miss Watson. Has the Thames always been this dirty? Amelia asked as she pulled on a pair of latex gloves, frowning down at the murky water. Exactly how long were you away from London? Lestrade said. 2 years in Paris, then 4 months in New York, Amelia said, eyeing the body of the man lying on the beach, grey hair still damp. She clasped her gloved hands, eyebrows arched. Well, this is certainly something. Do you reckon this is the connection, then? Said Lestrade, watching Sherlock and Amelia as they circled the corpse. The bomber? Must be, Sherlock said slowly. Odd, though, he hasn't been in touch. But we must assume that some poor bugger's primed to explode, yeah? Yes. Amelia took out a pair of collapsible magnifying glasses. Mycroft had given them to her a few years prior, believing them to be far superior to Sherlock's pocket magnifying glasses they allowed for a variety of settings. Sherlock furrowed his eyebrows as Amelia put them on, perching them on the end of her nose. Something wrong, Sherlock? No, Sherlock said, a little too quickly, looking away. Any ideas? Lestrade picked up. 7 so far, said Sherlock. 7? Lestrade exclaimed, not quite seeming to believe Sherlock. Oh, as if it's hard, Amelia said, her words dripping with sarcasm. I've started with 9. I think I've narrowed it down, though. I think you'll find that pride is a rather unbecoming trait, Miss Watson. And I think you'll find that I don't care, Mr. Holmes, Amelia said, bending down further, examining the ripped shirt pocket. She cocked her head, frowning at the distinctively knife-cut threads. Although it was starting to fray, Amelia could see the white threads were cut at an angle. Straight blade. Probably belonged to the killer's pocket knife. Cut off in a hurry, Amelia pointed out to the threads towards the ends, which were looser than the others, to Sherlock. He started off slow, then hurried up by the end, had to cut the last threads faster, and it pulled them out. Sherlock nodded as Amelia continued her thorough examination of the body, taking in the smaller details, the development of the varicose veins of the man's legs, which signified that he'd spent at least 5 years at a job that required him to be on his feet. Some faint letterings on the ticket stubs she'd found in the man's pockets, and the diameter of the bruises scattered on his face. She took a step back, waving her brother forward. He's dead. About 24 hours, John said, prodding at the corpse tentatively. Maybe a bit longer. Did he drown? Apparently not, Lestrade said. Not enough of the Thames in his lungs. Asphyxiation, Sherlock added in. Yes, I'd agree, Amelia nodded. There's telltale signs of it. There's quite a bit of bruising around the nose and mouth, John continued on. More bruises here and here. Fingertips, Sherlock mused aloud. Rather large fingers, I'd say. The bruises are wide, Amelia said. In his late 30s, I'd say, said John. Not the best condition. He's been in the river a long while, Amelia pointed. The water's destroyed most of the data. Sherlock smirked, bringing the attention to him. But I'll tell you one thing. The lost Faramir's painting's a fake. What? Lestrade blinked. Amelia pursed his lips. Okay, I got the fingertips part, but the Vermeer? Care to elaborate? We need to identify the corpse, Sherlock said, not seeming to hear Amelia. Find out about his friends and associates. Wait, Lestrade said hurriedly. What painting? What are you on about? It's all over the place. Haven't you seen the posters? Sherlock said. Dutch old masters supposed to have been destroyed centuries ago. Now it's turned up. Worth 30 million pounds. Okay, Amelia said slowly. So what's that got to do with the stiff? Everything. Have you heard of the golem? Sherlock was grinning now, and Amelia had never seen a more terrifying sight. It wasn't because his smile was particularly weird, but it seemed off on Sherlock's face. In a month of knowing each other, Amelia had hardly seen him smile, and if he had, it had only been condescending and sardonic. Smiling didn't suit him, and she'd become used to his sarcastic and cocky smirk. And now she was stunned into silence all because of a smile. Thankfully, Lestrade spoke first, so she didn't have to. Gollum? The detective inspector asked. It's a horror story, isn't it? John said. What are you saying? Jewish folk story, Amelia corrected after she cleared her throat, managing to summon the words to voice her thoughts. A gigantic man made of clay. It's also the name of an assassin. Real name Oscar Designer, one of the deadliest assassins in the world. She pointed down at the body, smiling as she came to realize how Sherlock had figured out. That is his trademark style. My crowd had me keeping an eye on him for years. You think this was him? So this is a hit? Lestrade said. My, everyone's certainly full of questions today. I suppose it isn't unlikely, Amelia said with a sigh. She prodded Sherlock in the ribs, tucking her glasses away. Go on, then. You figured it out. Definitely, said Sherlock to Lestrade, shooting Amelia a glare. The golem squeezes the life out of his victims with his bare hands. But what has this got to do with that painting? Lestrade said, confused. I don't see. You do see. You just don't observe, Sherlock said, exasperated. All right, girls, calm down, Amelia said, sighing. Sherlock, do you want to take us through it? Sherlock paused before pointing at the body. What do we know about this corpse? The killer's not left us with much, just this shirt and the trousers. They're pretty formal. Maybe he was going out for the night. But the trousers are heavy-duty polyester, nasty. Same as the shirt, cheap. They're both too big for him, so some kind of standard-issued uniform. Dressed for work, then. What kind of work? There's a hook on his belt for a walkie-talkie. Tube driver? Lestrade guessed. Sherlock gritted his teeth in a silent answer. Sherlock? Temper. Watch it, Amelia warned. Security guard? John suggested. More likely, Sherlock said. That'll be borne out by his backside. Backside? Lestrade exclaimed. Flabby, Amelia explained with a dismissive wave of her hand. You think he led a sedentary life, yet the soles of his feet and the nascent varicose veins in his legs show otherwise. So, a lot of walking and a lot of sitting around. Security's guards looking good. You forgot the watch. The watch helps too, Sherlock continues arm. The alarm shows he did regulate night shifts. Why regular? Lestrade said. Maybe it just set his alarm like that the night before he died. No. The buttons are stiff. Hardly touch. He set his alarm like that a long time ago. His routine never varied. But there's something else. The killer must have been interrupted, otherwise he would have stripped the corpse completely. There is some kind of badge or insignia on the shirt front that he tore off, Amelia elaborated. He cut it off with a dull knife. That's why the threads are fraying already. Then last threads towards the bottom right corner are nearly pulled out completely out of the fabric. His time was running out, so he had to hurry up. He used more strength into cutting it there, which is why when he pulled the blade up to break the threads, they got pulled out of the cotton. Which suggests that the dead man worked somewhere recognizable, some kind of institution. Sherlock nodded, pulling out a ball of paper from his pocket. Found this inside his trouser pockets, sodden by the river, but still recognizably. Tickets, John guessed. Ticket stubs, Amelia corrected. He worked in a museum or a gallery, Sherlock said. Did a quick check. The Hickman Gallery has reported one of its attendants is missing. He gestured to the body. Alex Woodbridge. Tonight they unveiled the rediscovering masterpiece. Now, why would anyone want to pay the golem to suffocate a perfectly ordinary gallery attendant? Interference. The dead man knew something about it. Something that would stop the owner getting paid £30 million. The picture's a fake. Fantastic, said John. Mere Turosis, Sherlock dismissed. And a happy new year, Lestrade said sarcastically. Poor sod, John said. Lestrade looked to Sherlock. I'd better get my feelers out for this golem character. Pointless, Amelia said, rolling her eyes slightly. They'll never find him, but I know a man who can. Who? Lestrade asked. Me, Sherlock said with a grin, turning away. John quickly following him. Here we go again, Amelia muttered sarcastically, meekly chasing after her friend. Chapter 15. History has a way. Don't you have something to do? Miss Wenceslas asked, her thick French accent becoming thicker in her frustration. She eyed the back of two security guards, one tall male with a head of dark curly hair, and the other a shorter female. Her brown hair pulled up into a bun. Just admiring the view, said the man. Yes, lovely, Miss Winston said sharply. Now get back to work. We open tonight. Amelia glanced over her shoulder at the curator. Doesn't it bother you? She inquired. What? It's a fake. It has to be, Sherlock said, turning around to face the woman. He took a step towards her, Amelia following behind. It's the only possible explanation. You're in charge, aren't you, Miss Wenceslas? Amelia's silver eyes traveled to the woman's ID badge. Who are you? Miss Wenceslas demanded fiercely, not recognizing either of them. Woodbridge knew that the painting was a fake, so someone sent the golem to take care of him. Amelia looked her in the eyes, using her slightly taller height to her advantage. Was it you? Golem? Miss Wenceslas frowned. What the hell are you talking about? Or are you working for someone else? Sherlock questioned. Did you fake it for them? It's not a fake, Miss Wenceslas insisted. That's what they all say when there are £30 million at stake, Amelia muttered sarcastically. It is a fake, Sherlock said. Don't know why, but there's something wrong with it. There has to be. What the hell are you on about? Miss Wenceslas asked. You know, I could have had you two sacked on the spot. Not a problem, Amelia said. No, Miss Wenceslas said, surprised. No, we don't work here, you see. Just popped in to give you a bit of friendly advice. Miss Wenceslas nodded her eyes suspiciously. How did you get in? Amelia started. Please. I want to know, Miss Wenceslas said. The art of disguise is knowing how to hide in plain sight, Amelia said, shrugging. Besides, your security system is shit. Who are you? Miss Wenceslas called out as Amelia and Sherlock turned on their heels to leave. Sherlock Holmes, Sherlock said, dropping his cap onto a railing. Amelia shrugged her jacket off, having not bothered with a hat. Amelia Watson. Am I supposed to be impressed? Miss Wenceslas asked, raising an eyebrow. You should be, Sherlock said rather smugly, dropping his jacket on the floor. He shoved the doors open almost flamboyantly, Amelia proudly holding her head up high as she skipped out of the room, without looking back at Miss Wenceslas. Sherlock said loudly, Have a nice day. That went well, Amelia said happily, as she and Sherlock left the gallery, discarding the loafers she had stolen for her brown-heeled Oxfords, which helped to decrease the height difference between her and Sherlock. Sherlock smiled down at her. I like those. Amelia glanced down at her feet. Oh, thanks. Are you feeling well? Sherlock asked, noting the red blood blush creeping its way up her cheeks. Curiously, he placed his hand on her shoulder. The red deepened. Yeah, Amelia said, trying to hide her emotional turmoil. Just happy that this is almost over, you know? And here I was, believing you were enjoying my company. No, I really do, Amelia said. You were joking. Indeed. However, why Wonder why you felt the need to reassure me that you enjoyed my friendship. Oh, so we're friends now. Sherlock froze. I didn't. He ruffled his hair as Amelia burst into laughter. It was a joke. You deserve some payback. There is no need to be so cruel. Not like you care, Amelia said, sliding into the cab. She leaned over to the front seat. Baker Street, if you will. Sherlock took a seat beside her. He clasped his hands in his lap, idly looking out the window. This continued on for a few minutes, Amelia, Sherlock, and the cabby sitting in a tension-filled silence. At last, Sherlock spoke. Why do you, Watson, find it so difficult to believe that I, unfortunately, like every other person on this planet, have feelings? He stopped shortly, looking into her silvery eyes. For example, when I'm not quite sure what I feel when I look when I'm not quite sure what I feel when I look at you. Amelia knew he wanted to say more, but chose not to, most likely because of the company they had. Sherlock, you're a fascinating person. You're as difficult to understand to me as quantum physics is to John. She handed the fare to the cabby as they pulled up in front of Speedy's cafe. Amelia got out of the cab, waiting for Sherlock. Sherlock joined her, wondering why Amelia hadn't yet gone inside. Amelia? Amelia ran a hand through her hair, turning away from him. She blew out a breath. I'm going to hell anyway. Might as well, she said to herself. Might as well what? Sherlock asked, but before he could do anything, Amelia spun around and pressed her hand to his jaw, pulling his head to meet hers. Their lips crashed violently, teeth hitting teeth, and lips caught in each other. The resultant rush was incredible, and Amelia was suddenly aware of the fact that Sherlock was not moving under her touch, and still as lifeless as a marble statue. Amelia broke away, using every inch of strength she could summon. It was like her feet were glued to the pavement, and she had to force them to take a step away from Sherlock. She had to step away before she continued what she'd started. She had spent years of careful control over her own emotions, ensuring that she didn't let them get the better of her once again. The last time she'd done so, she'd ended up losing the one person that meant everything to her. Now, here she was, all those years later, caught doing it all over again. People said history had a way of repeating itself, and Amelia found herself agreeing. She was stuck in a cycle of choosing the person who could be the very destruction of her, but she wouldn't let anything happen to Sherlock. Amelia had barely survived the last time she'd lost someone she'd loved. Moriarty was never going to lay a finger on Sherlock, not as long as Amelia had any say in it. Sherlock's breath was uneven as Amelia turned away, ragged and caught in his throat. Amelia, Sherlock said in a hoarse voice. She ignored him, hurriedly unlocking the door to 221B Baker Street, desperate to get away from the man she had so hastily kissed. For a second time in her life, lust had prevailed over the logic Amelia held above all else, and she found herself dizzy with the thought. Sherlock caught her by the wrist before she could escape upstairs and lock herself in the bedroom, clutching to for comfort. Amelia, he said again. I'm sorry, so sorry. I didn't mean for... She didn't get any further, because for the second time that day, Sherlock's lips met hers, his long fingers clutching desperately at her shoulders. Neither spoke as Amelia found herself kissing him back with equal desperation and fervor. Fingers and nails clawed at the skin hidden under far too many layers of clothing as they stumbled up the stairs, crashing into walls and the railing, not understanding the dynamics of corners nor the concept of walls. This was primal in its simplest form. There was nothing rational nor sane about the predicament Amelia had suddenly found herself in. This was insanity, an act of sheer folly and lunacy, and so Amelia gave herself into the madness.